Okay guys, for today's lesson we're going to start on page 41. So page 41 in our math packet there. And on page 41 we're going to start off there with number 7. Okay, so today we're continuing on with the word problems, and we're just going to work along here. Look at the information they give us. We're going to write some stories on some. We're going to write equations for others. So number 7 says, in triangle RST, and there's this symbol. This means angle. Angle R and angle S have the same measure. We know that's the case because down here they have a little pictogram for it. So picture is representing what angle R is and angle S. And so here, angle R, they make this long rectangle. Angle S, they say, is also this long rectangle. So you know those two are actually equal to each other. The measure of angle T is half the measure of angle R and angle S, which makes sense when you look at this picture because this rectangle is half the size of these other two. Okay, and it says Marie drew the following model that represents this situation. Okay, so help Marie write an equation that represents the sum of the angles in RST. And remember, the sum of the angles in a triangle is 180 degrees, so that's important. Okay, so there's different ways you can write this and still have the correct answer. Okay, but if we say R, we don't know what R is, we just call it X. But looking at this pictogram here, we know that S is also going to be X because it's the exact same. Now, if I'm looking at T, I know that T, in relation to these two, it's 1/2 of whatever this is. This is X. So T is going to be 1/2 X. Okay, if I'm going to write an equation for all of this, you know, I could say angle R, which is X, plus angle S, which also is X, plus angle T, which we say is 1/2 X. All of those are going to come together to give a total of 180 degrees, because that's how many degrees are in a triangle. Okay, so there's my equation. Now, if I was to solve this, which letter B is asking for, remember you'd want to drop a 1, drop a 1, and then it's 1 plus 1 plus 1/2, because they're all like terms because they have x's. So that's going to give you 2 and 1/2 x equals 180. Okay, 2 and 1/2. Now, for me, I'm going to go ahead and convert this to an improper fraction because I don't want to use a calculator. So I'm going to do 5/2 x, which represents the 2 1/2, equals 180. Okay, if I want to solve this, I'd multiply it by the reciprocal, so 2/5. Okay, which I know these 5's cancel, those 2's cancel, and over here, I can put that over 1. Now, I need to think, I'm going to get a pretty large number here, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel what I can. Okay, so 5 goes into 5 one time. And then I'm trying to think how many times will 5 go into 180. Okay, so 5 goes into 180. In this case, I believe it's going to be 36. Okay, so now I take 36 times 2, and I get 72. So x is equal to 72. Now, I could have came up with the same answer, just by dividing by 2 1/2 here. And you'll still get x equals 72. Now, what does that mean? That means that angle R is 72 degrees, and I'll put the label on as a word problem, which means angle S is 72 degrees. Okay, angle T has to be half of that, so 1/2 times 72 equals 36. And if I add all these together, they should add up to 180, which I know they are. So 72 plus 72 plus 36 will add up to 180 degrees. So down here, angle R, 72 degrees, angle S, 72, and angle T is 36. Okay, moving on, we got number 8. Number 8 says use the expressions and equations below to write a story. So here we have width, W, it says of a rectangle. Length is 2W. And we have 2W plus W plus 2W plus W equals 42 feet. So there's some story we need to come up with here that talks about a rectangle. It talks about the width, the length. And if you see what's going on here down in the equation, they're taking the 2W, which is the length. So they're saying length plus a width plus a length plus a width equals 42 feet. So what they've really done is they've really found the perimeter. Okay, so letter A, draw a picture of the rectangle that accurately describes the ratio of the length to its width. So we see here the width is W, but the length is twice that amount. So maybe about so. So this would be W, and then that would be 2W. Okay, so maybe my rectangle may look something similar to that. So W, 2W. Write a story that matches all that. Okay, so we're going to say Felix is building a fence for his pet hamster. Yeah, Felix told me he's a fan of hamsters, so he's building a fence for his hamster. Okay, and then in here we got to include all this information. So we could say the length of the fence is twice the width. Okay, the length of the fence is twice the width. He uses a total of 42 feet of fencing. So again, I got this 42 from right here where it says equals 42 feet. He uses a total, and total represents the equals. So he used 42 feet of fencing to make a rectangular, I'm having a hard time spelling rectangular pen for his hamster. Okay, so he uses 42 feet. We talk about that to make a rectangular pen. We talk about being a rectangular shape. We've also discussed that the length is twice the width, so we're pretty good with this. Okay, so then I just need one final question to end it off. I'm going to say, what are the dimensions? So what are the dimensions of his pen? Meaning pen that encloses where he's going to store his hamster. Okay, so up top here now, I need to solve this equation. Okay, so I see I have some variables by themselves. So I'm going to drop from 1. So I got 2 plus 1 is 3, and these are all like terms. Plus 2 is 5, plus 3 is 6. So I have 6W equals 42 feet. Now, I'm going to divide by 6, so that cancels. And I get W is equal to 7. Okay, so that means down below when I start filling this in, W stood for the width. Okay, so the width is 7, and I got to put a label on that. It's going to be 7 feet. Now my length was 2 times W. And if W is 7, that's 2 times 7. So that's 2 times 7 is 14 feet. And we're not really worried about C. So we wrote a story, we solved it, and we have our dimensions of our rectangle. And if I were to add 14 plus 7 plus 14 plus 7, which represents the 4 sides of the rectangle. It should add up to 42 feet. 14 plus 7 is 21. So there's 21. Here's 21. And 21 plus 21 is 42 feet. So it does work out. Okay, moving on. Let's go to page 42. Okay, on page 42, we're going to start off with number 9. And number 9 says, Josh works 40 hours a week. Sometimes it's helpful to underline or circle in numbers you see him come across as a nurse practitioner. He makes time and a half for every hour he works, over 40 hours. And Josh works 60 hours one week and earns $2,100. So 60 hours one week, he earns $2,100. And part of an equation represents the situation shown below. Okay, here's a real world application when people ask, when am I ever going to use this? Well, here's a case. You know, if you're ever going to work and you get an hourly pay raise, then what happens is if you work 40 hours, that's considered a normal work week. Anything beyond 40 hours, you get overtime for. And overtime is represented by taking your normal pay rate, and it's basically time and a half. So it's like 1.5 times the amount you normally get. Okay, so look down here at this equation. And we see his overtime pay rate represented 1.5. So this is 1.5. We just talked about that. P, 1.5 times P. Hours worked at a regular rate is 40. Now, nowhere in the story does it tell how much he makes per hour. So the variable we're using is the letter P. Okay, the P represents his normal pay rate. Okay, overtime, he gets 1.5 times that pay rate. Now, looking at the story, we do know how many overtime hours he works, and that's going to go in this last little box right here. Okay, because he works 60 hours, and 40 hours is normal. So if I take the 60 and subtract the 40, that means he had 20 overtime hours. And that 20 will go right there. Okay, so now I need to go ahead and actually figure out this equation if I want to find out what his hourly pay rate is. Okay, so P times 40 is 40P. Plus, and then I take 1/2 P times 20. Okay, 1/2 P times 20 gives you 30P equals 2,100. So then if I take 40P plus 30P and add those together, you get 70P. Okay, 70P equals 2,100. And then if I want to divide by 70, that cancels. And when you're dividing in a situation like this, when you have some zeros on the end, I can cross off this 0 with that 0 and make the problem a little bit easier. So instead of saying 2,100 divided by 70, I can say 210 divided by 7. And that's a little bit easier to do mentally. So P is equal to 30. Okay, now P represents his normal pay rate. So his regular hourly rate is $30 per hour. It's pretty good. Okay, his overtime hourly rate would be represented as 1.5 P. So I would have to take 1.5 and multiply by P, 30. Okay, so 1.5 times 30 is going to give you $45 per hour. So you'll notice in overtime he's making a lot more. Okay, number 10. Number 10, we have the ratio of girls to boys at the gymnastics center is 3:2. If there's 180 kids that train at the gymnastics center, how many of them are girls and how many of them are boys? Okay, whenever they give you a ratio, the problem is not really that difficult. It's like saying 3:2. It's comparing something. That's what a ratio does. So what we want to do is we want to say this: 3 x, and then 2x. So I'm just putting an x on the numbers they give me for the ratio. Okay. Now I know that altogether there's 180, which means altogether I got to add them up. Okay, so it's going to be, my equation is going to be 3x plus 2x. So 3 to 2, and 3 represents the girls because it's the first one listed in the story. So this 3x is my girls. The 2x is the boys. Okay, and that equals 180. So now I can do 3x plus 2x is 5x, and 5x equals 180. Then we're going to divide by 5. This cancels. And then x is going to be equal to 36. Okay, so x is 36. Now, that doesn't really answer the question, though, because it says, how many are girls? Well, if I'm looking here, girls, again, was 3x. So if x is 36, you take 36 times 3. Okay, and 36 times 3 is going to be 108. And then how many are boys? Well, the boys, that was 2x. So you're going to take 36 times 2, which is 72. And if I did it correct, 108 plus 72 should equal the total amount of kids there, which is 180, and it does. So put some labels on that. There's 108 girls, and there's 72 boys. Okay, number 11, we're going to skip here, and we're going to write out this equation. So I'm going to say 3m plus 2m plus m plus 5 equals, let's say, 85. Okay, so again, I'm not worried about this problem here, but I'm giving you this equation right here. 3m plus 2m plus m plus 5 equals 85. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and to write a story about all of this. Okay, so come up with a story that has something that represents 3m, something that represents 2m, something that represents m plus 5. And when you add them all together, you get 85 of something. Okay? And then go ahead and solve for that.